Hey, welcome in, everyone. New episode of Ray Hall Talking College Ball. I'm your host, Ray Hall, and let's get right to it. Week 11 recap. Pretty exciting week. Back to back weeks where you kind of notice a lot of upsets or at least unexpected outcomes. And it's interesting that it's happening this point in the season once the college football playoff rankings are out because you're going to see exactly how this committee deals with these changes, these outcomes, these wins, these losses. Do they care how you win? Do they care who you beat, or is it just win and get in? So, pretty pivotal point in the season, obviously. Most teams are kind of coming down to the final stretch of their conference play, have some clarity in the Big Ten. Really, I think it's been like that for the past 3 or 4 weeks, but it's kind of down to two teams now. Indiana and Ohio State have been on this kind of death march to Indianapolis to see who's going to be probably the number one overall seed and the Big Ten champion. But speaking of Indiana, I want to get this out there because I was thinking about this today, and in my head it makes sense. I think Indiana fans are going to hear this, not like this. Probably Oregon fans as well. Penn State fans might be elated, but I think Indiana, Penn State, Oregon, and Iowa are all in the same tier. There's obviously some luck that goes into that. People forget Penn State was so close to beating Oregon. That outcome could have gone completely different. Just kind of like how Oregon was so close to losing to Iowa today, but they didn't. They pulled out a win. But say those two games didn't happen, you're looking at a 3-loss Oregon team now. Looks a little bit different. I think everyone's talking about that team differently. Now, obviously, you can take any school's two closest games and flip the results, and especially if they go against them, you're going to be talking about that team in a very different manner. But I think the margins are so thin here, and all four of these teams have played each other, that you can kind of get a good idea. They've all played each other. They've all played each other close. They've played a mix of home and away games against each other. And in my opinion, they're all in the same tier. That with all that being said, that means Ohio State is the best team in the Big Ten. It's not a Ohio State and Indiana. I think it's Ohio State, break, then everyone else. And that's kind of been like the talk the past 5-6 weeks is, oh, it's Ohio State and Indiana, then everyone else. Oh, it's Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and it's everyone else. Early in the year it was, oh, it's Ohio State, Miami, and everyone else. It's Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, everyone else. Now it's just Ohio State. I think there's some luck to Ohio State's schedule where they haven't really had the chance to be exposed, but it's also just the level of the team. Very rarely do their offense and defense separately not click. I think if they're having a bad offensive day, it's not the full game, and their defense really hasn't had a bad day to begin with. So I think this game today against Purdue, they let up 10 points. So I don't even know where their averages are at, but I think it's 14 is still the most points they've let up, and that was against Illinois and Penn State. I think Illinois might have been 13. Anyways, defense is very good. Offense that sometimes kind of sputters. Their defense affords them the opportunity to sputter and to try new things and to work on things in game and develop their offense. So when they need a high-power offense or they need to grind it out, they can because they've practiced it and performed it. But I don't really think there's been anyone to test that defense yet. I'm not sure if Indiana's going to be the team that's going to test that defense either. People always talk about, the RPO offense that Indiana runs. If you have the athletes out there, you can stop that offense really easily. I mean, I guess kind of. Penn State's probably the second best roster on the defensive side of the ball in the Big Ten, and they held them to 27 points today. So it wasn't a great performance, but it wasn't like this high-powered Indiana offense that we've grown to accustomed to seeing every single week. So, but going back to that take, Oregon, Penn State, Iowa, Indiana, I think they're all in the same class. Indiana fans probably going to be like, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. Listen, if you look at the results, they beat Iowa by 5, beat Penn State by 3, beat Oregon by 10. All right, now look at the results for Oregon. Lost to Indiana by 10. Beat Ohio State by, I think it was 7 because of the overtime, but it was in overtime. And then beat Iowa by 2. And then if you want to go to the other side, Penn State and Oregon, they had that close head-to-head game. I think it was 1 point difference, and they both lost close games to those two teams. So I think they're just in the same tier. And I think Ohio State, best team in the country, is kind of propping up the Big Ten argument a little bit more. Kind of like how Alabama in the 2010s was propping up the SEC argument. Ohio State's now doing that for the Big Ten. What I think you have in the SEC is a lot of teams in that same tier, but there's just 6 to 7 to 8 of them. So that's where we're at. But we'll talk about that Oregon game today. Won 18-16, last second field goal, take the win. They don't ask how, they ask how many. It is another win, another step closer to the postseason, another step closer to accomplishing the goals this team has set out to accomplish at the beginning of the year. I would say probably Big Ten championship is out of the picture, but I think they would take a playoff win over the Big Ten championship. Just ask the guys that were on the team last year which one they would have preferred. Kind of uninspiring game from them. They were able to. Passing game wasn't there. They're having some injuries in the wide receiver position, so that makes it hard, obviously. And their running game was kind of there just enough to keep it close. But Iowa holding you to 18 points isn't some terrible outcome. Iowa's a really good defense. It's the nature of the game that they want to play. The environment obviously had a factor on it too. But I think people are starting to get turned off a little bit by Oregon. Going in the year, I think everyone was kind of like, Oregon, can they do it again? Can they hit on 3 transfer quarterbacks in a row? I know Moore obviously this is his second year there, so it's a little bit different. But can Oregon just keep reloading? After the Penn State game, they're like, yep, Oregon's reloaded. I mean, they may be better than they were last year. Now I think people are kind of coming back down on them, which I think is warranted. They haven't performed the way that a top team would. But kind of like I was saying, outside of Ohio State, who has performed like a top team would week in, week out. So Iowa, I think they're eliminated now from the playoffs. I never really had them going into the playoffs. I really want to do an experiment where you take the quarterback that leads the league or leads the country in passing and then put him in Iowa's offense and see what his numbers are. Because I think it just has to be when they put on that black and gold. The idea of a forward pass just escapes their mind. So Iowa's a good football team. I mean, they'll play in a big bowl game versus probably an SEC team. I know both fan bases either would love it because they hate each other or would hate it because they've seemed to have played a good amount in the past couple of years. But an Iowa-Tennessee bowl game would be awesome, watching that on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day in preparation for the actual playoff games. I'd be very excited to watch that again. All right, now moving to the other part of that equation. When we're talking about the tier talk, we'll talk about Indiana versus Penn State. I thought Penn State wasn't going to be able to move the ball. And I'm not saying they had some great offensive performance out there. But I took the under on their team total points, which I think was 17.5 or 16.5. Was not expecting to get 17 points. They got to 24. They had a lead with I think 2 minutes left, and just kicked the ball off. This would have been a really great win for the Penn State fans because obviously nothing this season really matters at this point. You're all focused on the next season and your next head coach. But still having to have a huge win in Happy Valley, that would have been a lot for that fan base. Wasn't the case. Fernando Mendoza may have had his Heisman moment today. I think it's really going to come down to Heisman-wise championship weekend. All 4 of the quarterbacks that are expected to play and are kind of in the top of the rankings. One of them is going to put on a performance that seals it that day. But Indiana, they don't look like the unbeatable team when they had to play a team that's matched with them physically. If you can match up on the lines with Indiana, which I'm not saying it's impossible to do or it's easy to do, they're sound on offense and defensive line, but if you have the guys that can match up with them, then you can exploit them. Mendoza had a really bad day up until, I wouldn't say really bad day, had a really average to kind of bad day up until that last drive. And that huge catch in the back of the end zone saved their season, not actually, but kind of saved the narrative for them. I'm also just curious, if they had a Penn State defensive back there, like what are you looking at? Just hit his legs, drive him out of bounds. Like, don't even try and make a play at the ball. He's in the air, just drive him out of bounds. Don't even let him get a foot down. But what do I know? I always see those catches. I'm like, why are they worried about trying to get the ball? Just drive him out of bounds. Then it'll be an incomplete pass. Who cares if they caught it or not? They can't get the foot down. It's not a catch. But a huge moment for Indiana. Another heartbreak for Penn State in a season full of heartbreaks. Indiana really doesn't have much left on their schedule. They have their matchup in Indianapolis with Ohio State if they stay on this track. I think they can even afford to drop a game right now and still make it just based off how it is. But I don't think Coach Signetti is telling the boys that, hey, we can drop one here, don't worry. Don't really think that's part of his coaching style. So that'll be a good weekend, though. I'm excited for that. I mean, unfortunately, it's coming up close. And I think we're at the halfway point of the calendar of college football now. So everyone just take a moment in, take a deep breath. We have Maction on during the week. I think CUSA's still playing during the week. Enjoy those games because pretty soon it's going to be April and we're going to be counting down the days and waiting for another season. So enjoy it while you can. All right, next thing we're going to talk about Texas Tech versus BYU. I mean, Texas Tech just kind of spanked BYU. Texas Tech is well aware that their offensive and defensive lines are the best in the Big 12, and they're just going to let them eat. Texas Tech needs to understand, though, that if they go into these games with that same mindset, and when I say these games, I'm talking about the playoffs against these other top-ranked teams, they go in those games with the same mindset, and they're okay with settling for field goals in the red zone, it is going to be a very short trip for Texas Tech in the playoffs. You cannot settle for field goals against these top teams. I think it was actually Chris Kleiman that said it when he was at North Dakota State facing off against James Madison. But JMU was kicking field goals, couldn't convert in the red zone to get 7, was settling for 3, and at the end of the game, North Dakota State won. Chris Kleiman said, field goals don't beat me. When you're a top team, field goals don't beat you. Texas Tech needs to learn, needs to figure something out where they can convert. They had a nice fade for the touchdown. That was awesome. But you kind of want to see more from that team. Even though they absolutely manhandled BYU, yes, I still kind of want to see more. To see, like, okay, they are going to scale when they play the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Notre Dames, the Indianas. You cannot settle for field goals in those positions. So, also, hats off Texas Tech. Thank you. BYU is kind of, I wouldn't say paper tigers, but they've been paper tigers. A lot of people, especially in the power ratings world, have been waiting for them to lose, and you gave them just that. So thank you to Texas Tech. I think BYU and Texas Tech will probably meet up again in the Big 12 championship. I don't have the standings in front of me to see who can even be a factor in that, but that is the only chance that the Big 12 can get 2 teams in. I'll probably need some help from Texas and Oklahoma losing games, possibly Notre Dame losing a game. But BYU needs to play Texas Tech much closer in the Big 12 championship to even have a chance at the playoffs. Play them close or win, and then they'll be in. I think if Texas Tech loses against a team they already beat in the Big 12 championship, with how their season has gone and how they've kind of boat raced everyone else, they'll be in also. So If you're in the Big 12, you're rooting for a BYU Texas Tech championship close game where BYU wins, and then you'll get some respect. Hopefully, one of those teams wins a game in the playoffs and kind of has you progress forward, so you can get more respect. Because the respect out there for the ACC is completely gone. So why don't you take up all of that leftover power that they used to have and use it for yourself now? Speaking of the ACC, I mean, ACC does it again to themselves. Louisville loses to Cal. Virginia loses to Wake. Like I said earlier in the show, the picture is a little bit more clear now, but it's also muddier. ACC is a one-bid league, and I hope it's Georgia Tech because that's probably the best out of those teams, and they would be most fun to watch. Haynes King deserves to be able to play on those big stages from what he's done for that school and program. So hopefully Georgia Tech can not slip up again and finish out the season, win in Charlotte, and get a spot in the playoffs. But it was a relief to see that UVA and Louisville lost to kind of clear up that picture a little bit. But then also, does it really clear it up? I still have no idea what the tiebreakers are. Duke is projected as a team that can win. We have Andy and Ari on the On3 show talking about how the ACC can be left out of the playoff completely if Duke wins the ACC championship, because they wouldn't be one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions, and they also wouldn't be in the top 12, which I don't think would happen. I think the committee would find a way to get Duke in there. They would be 10-4 or 9-4. Get Duke in at 9-4 as the ACC champion, even if they weren't originally ranked. But we'll see. Speaking of one-bid leagues and all that, the American and the ACC are the same league. The ACC just has bigger brands. I mean, the way that they beat up on each other and kind of that bottleneck towards the top, the American and the ACC are the same league. If people are saying the Big 12 and the SEC are the same league, the American and the ACC are the same league. Really sucks for Memphis. Brendan Lewis obviously wasn't healthy. They had a great effort at trying to make a comeback. Had a chance to win the game, or at least tie it. Had a chance to win because they went for 2, got the extra point. I think it was 32-38 was the final. Not only mad at them just because they cost me money in a parlay. Last leg, needed them to win. It's a nice little 7-leg parlay. Would be a nice payday. Unfortunately, that wasn't what happened. So, sorry, Memphis. I feel for you guys on the same level that you guys are feeling right now. Your playoff chances and my parlay losing, I would say, are just about the same level of sadness. So, moving forward, is it going to be USF from the American that gets the bid? I'm not sure. James Madison's gone on a 7-game winning streak. Handled Marshall pretty well. It was a little scary there for a little bit, but they kind of pulled away. Was San Diego State before this weekend, but Hawaii absolutely boat raced them. The Rainbow Warriors were getting 6.5 points in Hawaii, which is just unheard of. But anyways, I don't make the lines, so I think it's really JMU or USF. If USF wins the American, I can see them being like, yep, this team deserves to be ranked. They deserve to be in. Cool. If it's a team outside of USF from the American, I think JMU will get in. I'll have to look at the standings to see what teams are most likely to even make the championship. I think it's USF and Tulane right now. Tulane's a possibility. They could also make it, but I really think they'll respect JMU's record, especially since JMU's only loss was a relatively close game, competitive game against Louisville. Louisville kind of pulled away towards the end, but Barnett, the Duke's quarterback, was injured, still recovering from his ACL tear of a year ago, and now he kind of looks fully healthy, and then offense is taking the next step. So I think I like the Dukes there as the G5 representative. So at that point, what we're talking about right now, I have the Dukes, Georgia Tech. I'm going to say BYU and both Texas Techs. That's 4 teams. Give me Ohio State, Indiana, and gosh, I really want to put USC here. We'll say Oregon. So was that 7 teams? So 5 spots open. So 4 for the SEC and Notre Dame. That is until this weekend when Notre Dame College Game Day is going to the Pitt Notre Dame game, and Pitt is going to beat Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame will be out of the playoff contention. But we'll move to the SEC. Big results there. I think Georgia closed at either plus or minus 9.5, minus 10.5. Sitting around a touchdown to 8.5 earlier in the week, and they just boat raced Mississippi State. Once Mississippi State didn't come out firing, I knew Georgia was going to run away with it, just because the idea for that game was Georgia was going to have a slow start. Mississippi State was going to come up to a lead, 2-touchdown, 2-score lead, and Georgia's going to come back and win, but not cover. And that's why I was on the Bulldogs plus Mississippi State Bulldogs plus 9.5. That obviously wasn't the case. Georgia pretty much wire to wire was putting belt's ass on Mississippi State. And that's kind of what you want to expect from this team. A lot of people have been talking about it, where the blueprint model is out for how to win this 12-team playoff and become national champions. And it's like how Ohio State did last year. It's like you don't want to be playing your best ball in September. Really don't want to be playing it in October. November, you want to kind of start peaking. So then when you hit the playoffs, you're playing your best ball. And it's harder for teams to game plan for you because you're just playing at such a high level. Now, every team that started all kind of slow is saying that their team is trying to do that, which I don't think is the case. I think that's just kind of coach speaking away of like, yeah, we start off slow, but we can still improve. We can still move on week to week and get better, and then we want to be playing our best football towards the end of the year. It's nice to say that. It's not going to be the case for everyone. I mean, look at Dabo Swinney. They lost their first week against LSU, and they were like, yeah, this was a tough game to start the year. We had a final on the first day. We're going to progress. So when we do this final again towards the end of the year, we'll be ready. Obviously not the case for them. But Gunnar Stockton's playing good football. Georgia defense looked better. I'm not saying Mississippi State is a high-powered offense where they deserve the respect. And Georgia played a great defensive game. They did play good on defense, but it didn't leave. You kind of needed to see that win from Georgia where they pulled away from an inferior opponent, but it's not like, okay, now I can put the Bulldogs, mark them in a matchup against Ohio State in the quarterfinals or semifinals. There's still room for them to grow. So we'll see how that is. Good news for them, though. It looks like they're probably not going to be playing in Atlanta for the SEC championship. They'll probably won't get a first-round bye, but 5 or 6 seed and play one of the lesser last-in teams. And then get a matchup with the lowest ranked of the buys. So that's a good spot for them to be in. A&M versus Missouri. Everyone's talking about, Missouri, there's not a lot of film on this quarterback. It's a 4-star blue chip quarterback. Who knows? Maybe they can give A&M a run for their money. No, A&M belts ass. Just dominant the entire game. And you might see some more Marcel Reed Heisman hype, which was probably deserved based off the season he's having and the season that A&M's having. But Mike Elko, he's a good football coach. They run a good football program around there. They're going to be a tough team to beat. I think they're closer to Ohio State than Indiana is right now at this point. I think they are actually, how we were just talking about the team peaking at the right moment. I don't think they've had the early season losses, but I think they are peaking at the right moment. That's really what I'm going to say about that game. Missouri's not going to be ranked anymore. They shouldn't be ranked anymore. I think it was kind of a nicety that they were ranked by the committee last week. But we'll talk about their likely opponent in Atlanta for the SEC championship and Alabama versus LSU. 20-9 final score. It's weird. You watch the Alabama game. Ty Simpson will throw for like close to 300 yards, but they'll only score 20 points. So you're like, okay, what happened there? Well, one, they can't run the ball, so they have to throw it. Alabama has not developed a run game. People say, maybe they're working on it this week. Hopefully it'll pop. It has not popped for them, so they have to throw the ball to move the ball. When you do that, your margin for error becomes higher because you're expecting or you're relying on these downfield completions to generate any type of offense. The deep ball is not there for Alabama, so that obviously will slow down their scoring. But Ty Simpson still looked methodical out there. They just didn't have the actual numbers to back it up. I'm not ready to say Alabama's offense is a problem. LSU has a good defense, and they had a whole off week. Brian Baker's still there. They had a whole bye week to prepare for this team. So they scored 20 points, and that was 10 more than they needed to win. But there are some questions where I'm like, okay, if you can't run the ball and you can't hit downfield passes, what are you guys gonna have to rely on 12 play drives, 15 play drives to generate points? That's not a good recipe for success. Alabama's defense looked pretty good, but also LSU's offense has not been up to stuff this year. So Nussmeier gets bench. Van Wieren from Mississippi State comes in. Not much change. I think if you talk to Garrett Nussmeier, there's a lot of him that says, yeah, I probably should have left last year, especially with how the quarterback class was this past year. He probably could have been the second or third quarterback, definitely first rounder. I'm not sure if he'll be a second rounder after this year. And I think he doesn't have any eligibility left, so he has to go. So just kind of unfortunate in Baton Rouge right now. Alabama, I think they need to win one more SEC game to guarantee a spot into the SEC championship. Big weekend coming up, Oklahoma at Alabama. That was obviously a game last year that kind of ruined all of Alabama's playoff chances after that point. So I'm sure there's going to be some revenge from that side of the ball. But Oklahoma is also a wounded animal fighting for their life to stay in playoff competition. They're at the 12th seed right now. College football playoff shows, so they wouldn't be in based off of the ACC and Group of 5 teams getting their bids to get in. So there's room. They need to do some work. So I think I saw the early line. Alabama's -6.5 at home. I expect it to be a good game. We'll break it down later on in the week. That's probably going to be the biggest game of the weekend. I know that Pitt and Notre Dame is the college game day destination, but in my opinion, that's the biggest game. I think they just wanted to not had a good time going to a Big 12 game. They wanted to just go straight back to an SEC game. Wanted to give some other parts of the country some love. So USC won Friday night. People want to talk about like the backup quarterback putting on the punters in the same number, coming in for the fake punt. Big Ten says it's illegal. Well, it wasn't illegal because it wasn't called. It may be illegal now. They may be looking out for it now. But obviously, like you saying it was illegal doesn't really do anything. But I think USC is going to have a matchup with Oregon here. That's going to be a good game. I think they're going to be able to match up very well, and USC is going to be able to cause some problems for Oregon. Hopefully it's not rainy like it was in Iowa this past week, and it's the beautiful if that game's in California, then you don't have to worry about the weather. It might be a little rainy if it's up in Eugene, but I don't think so. But that'll be a big game. What other games are really pressing? I mean, Georgia and Texas, that's going to be huge. People are trying to work out a scenario where Texas splits their games between A&M and Georgia but still makes the playoff. I think that will require some more chaos in the Big Ten and SEC elsewhere. And then possibly BYU dropping another one, Big 12 becoming another one-bid league. But I don't think you can rely on that. If you're Texas, you just have to have the mindset you need to win out. There's 3 9-3 SEC teams last year that were all left out for, if you want to call them lesser teams, then you can. But obviously, their records were better, so it's hard to call them lesser teams. So Texas, Oklahoma, they both need to win out, and they both have very tough games left in their schedule. Yeah, so moving forward for this next week, I'm going to try and get my rankings out and my new proposed playoff format on Tuesday. Do some big game breakdowns for Tuesday, but then looking at Thursday or Friday, we'll get the actual prediction for the upcoming week, going over the rest of the big games I don't touch on Tuesday, and then offering my picks this week. Been a little bit slow on my end getting these videos out, so I apologize for that. Try to make some updates to the actual image of the show, so hopefully you guys like those. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, ask your questions in the comment section. I'll try and get to them on Tuesday or Thursday or Friday next week. And enjoy it. Like I said, take a deep breath, smell the roses, we're in the middle of the calendar part of college football season. There's only so many finite days and games left of this season. So enjoy it while you can. Appreciate you guys watching.